Nancy, we were just in a conversation that we were trying to do this podcast. That's why it's been about 2 weeks. But let's just bring the audience right in this conversation, because what we wanted to share today is something that's very transparent. However, it's really hard for me to describe this. So we're just going to bring the audience right in where our conversation was at. And what the questions you were asking me, Nancy, was to describe what I went through and how I gave away let's just call it dignity. And how, even in a sense, as how I was taken advantage of. And when we get in this conversation, there were times early on in my past I was taken advantage of. Why is it hard for me to really, as a leader, admit I was taken advantage of? I have a real problem with that. And we go back and forth on this. What would people draw from that? It was pretty pathetic in some of my earlier times in life that were extremely painful.
James, let's not. That's exactly what we were talking about. The conversation you and I were talking about earlier. Okay, yes. Taken advantage of is one thing. What was done to you was more than taken advantage of.
Yeah, but what's healthy for somebody else to listen to this? It's pathetic. It really is.
How is it?
Why do you want to?
How is it pathetic when you have a desire and insecurity that a community knows about, and they extort it, they pervert it, and they use it as leverage to keep you, and then you become the scapegoat? How is that pathetic?
Because at the end of the day, I would feel on myself, you poor sap. You should have known. You really should have known.
And I was just talking to you, James. If someone is in that, I'm not ready to hear I'm a poor sap, and I really could care less on whether you're a poor sap or not.
Okay.
But describe to me, if I'm currently in a situation like this, you're going to tell me I'm a poor sap? You're going to tell me I need to suck it up? You're going to tell me all these things? How am I even going to recognize this? Because, James, you didn't recognize it until everything fell apart. Till what was working was no longer working.
Here,
then you started recognizing it.
Let me answer one question at a time. The first question.
Oh, I'm on a roll. Don't stop me.
The first question you asked me is what would I tell somebody else? Would I tell them they're poor sap? No, I would not.
Then why would you say that to yourself? If you're not going to tell me that, then why would you say that to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really would come in some aspects that, I guess I would be consistent in what I've said in the past. I'm always harder on myself than other people, but that doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense at all. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. It's a good question.
Yeah, because again, let's just be honest here, James.
And that's why we've waited for a while to have this podcast this week for transparency.
We're talking rhetorical here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting down to serious.
It's hard for you to admit that it was happened. It's hard for you to admit to yourself that it happened.
Well, I mean, and I definitely should have known. It's extremely hard for me to happen. I guess who I was in the past was very clear. I won't accept it. And that's why it's been hard. We've been having these conversations. It is hard for me also to accept. I think that's what you said, but I'm just going to speak my own language. Mm-hmm. It is hard for me to accept that it happened. So how I've worked through in the past is I find a happy place and get away from it, and I'm back, and then I forget about it, right? Does that make sense?
We talked about that in one of our earlier podcasts,
yeah.
Forgive and Forget. Yes, that's
yeah, we talked about Forgive and Forget. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a happy place.
Yeah.
It's all good, and I forget, and I move on. For when we talk about this in the last few years and what has happened, it has taken me extreme amount of time to accept this. there's been times where I would, yeah, I don't like accepting because it's extremely painful. I don't even like talking about it. That's why we've been waiting. We took a while I don't like talking about it. I don't see, and that's what, and then the second part of your question is I don't see how it's helpful for anybody else. It's very, for me, it's very shameful to share this.
Okay. Then I would ask you a question because, again, you didn't recognize it until what was working.
But nobody's a victim
working.
here. See, in my mind, I keep on hearing I'm a victim, and I wasn't a victim.
Who's telling you you're a victim?
I don't know. It just feels like when you share, it was poor me. I'm a victim. It's victim mentality. I don't allow myself to think that way. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that was a thought that just came to my mind as I'm talking here.
You're not a victim. So that's the thing. But
yeah,
yet
who's saying I'm a victim? I'm saying I am.
Exactly.
I don't want to accept it.
You would basically, you pretty much.
It's
was
really
very strong.
Okay.
Was very confident, and it can't happen to you.
Yeah,
this will never happen to you.
Yeah, I get that. And you know what I was strong in? You really want to know what I was strong in?
Well, yeah.
I was strong in polishing everybody's shoes. This is what's shameful for me. You want to hear it? And again, we're not going confrontational. I'm talking in third person. You know what?
So what was
you know what I was strong in? It was strong in performing to make sure everybody's okay. Polish. What I mean by polishing shoes, performance. In performance on multiple levels, make sure I didn't make anybody happy. Even in my own marriage, made sure my wife was happy, no matter what it was, whatever it took. And my wife, she was the queen. She needed to be happy. So I would perform for my kids. I performed for my church. I performed. I couldn't make any mistakes. I had to be. I don't like the word. I had to be good. I had to be above reproach. I don't know if that's the right words, because a lot of words come to me. I had to, and there was a tremendous amount I went through I had to absolve for my sins. So when I messed up, I had to apologize all the time. I had to absolve because I wasn't good. I didn't perform. I wasn't batting 50. I don't know what the average you bat is baseball.
So why is that very shameful?
Because it's pathetic in some ways. I gave a piece of myself every day. It was pathetic. And what I mean by giving a piece of myself, I came to a place where I really didn't even know who I was. And I don't like sharing that. I don't want pity. I don't want nothing. But in my mind, I say I shouldn't share that. But if I would put on my tombstone today, here's a man that continued to be a doormat, continued to pour himself out for nothing, fall on his sword, take everybody's responsibility. And not to say the least, never measured up. Mm-hmm. Worked so hard to measure up, but never did at the end, in his own mind. So when we talk about why I don't want to share what I went through, because we talk a lot about our dash. What do we stood for? And so it's really embarrassing. Does that make sense?
No, not really. I think you need to elaborate more on why would it be embarrassing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because it's not what, by doing all that, is not what I envisioned how the tombstone would enter. I had a total different vision. I thought by performing, I would get different results.
Mm-hmm.
So by being right, or by being a servant of all, so to speak, what ended up happening to me is through which I will, as I look back, what happened to me when the hardest times in my life came, there was nobody there.
All this work that you did, all this labor that you did was in vain when it really mattered.
Yeah.
So I don't think embarrassing would be a proper word to use. Again,
I mean, it was like you were abandoned all over again when you were a child. Because at 2 years old, my parents abandoned me.
Right. So I don't really think that if you would be if I'm in that situation right now, would you tell me that I'm an embarrassment?
No, I would not.
So then embarrassing
because I would
not
understand.
be a proper word.
I would understand. Yeah, I would understand painful. I would understand if I was sit across the table from you. I don't understand that has to be extremely hurtful, painful. Disappointing would be a light word.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the word that would come to my mind would be unjust.
And that is what you've been dodging all along, is you don't want to talk about the unjust that was done to you. So you downplay it with people were taking advantage of you, or it was embarrassing because you did all this, and you've been downplaying the very thing, exactly what you talk about. If you were talking to me and I was in the situation, you would tell me very clearly, I am being unjustly treated.
There was an injustice, yes.
But you're not able to speak of that of yourself. And why would that be?
It's hard for me. Yeah, I think what I've taught myself is if you just perform more, they'll like you. If you just take it. Why is it hard for me to say unjust? I mean, part of it, do I think highly of myself, that I'm strong, that I got this? I think that's part of it. I got this. I can handle it.
Or could it be, that's one part, or could it be,
because I know that's part of it,
that you don't want to face or accept the deepest desire that was in your heart that you gave. That
I would never
away.
share nobody my deepest desire in my heart.
You didn't have to, because that was your performance.
Well, of course, but I lied to myself. I said, I'm not sharing what I want. You're right. I didn't see that. Yeah, but out of my performance, that was my deepest desire, but I would never tell nobody that.
But that's exactly what I'm saying. So it really
except for the people that were closest to me.
Right.
That also betrayed me the most, and I can say they betrayed me. It's hard for me, but when we look at it from a logical piece, I definitely was betrayed. Mm-hmm. Definitely by people I love the most.
Yeah.
When I stopped, this is where I will get emotionally. When I stopped performing, they were gone, or not even gone. I was judged. I mean, again, this is hard for me to say because I don't want to sound like I'm blaming other people and that I wasn't a problem. So you can see how I'm deflecting back and forth. I don't want to say it, but yet I know.
Just say it, James.
Okay, but I don't.
Stop dodging it. Just say it.
I'm not dodging it. I don't want to be judgmental myself. You know. All right, you want me? I mean, you're looking at me that way, that I'm dancing and everything. Well, Okay, I'll say it because if I say it, I'll be judged again, right? This goes
Now
on.
you're confusing the
Well,
crap out of
that
me.
is it's what goes on my mind. Just listen to me, okay? So I'll say it. Yes, I was betrayed by the people. From my perspective, I was betrayed by the people that I love the most, that I love, that I poured into, and that hurt like hell.
And when you stopped performing, you were saying they were gone. Actually, you said they were more than gone. So what do you mean by more than gone?
Well, there were attacks that came at me that called me in denial. That there was a number of things that
You got under character assassination.
I did.
And they were wanting to cancel you.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, they didn't just leave. They didn't just bow
Well,
out
it's not
gracefully.
only cancel; it's destroy you.
Well, yeah.
I mean, there was. It's like there was no call for it. There really wasn't.
No.
I mean, it would be nice if he just went away, but there were subtle attacks that were definitely that you knew were to hurt you, and that was the people that are closest to me.
Stabs to the heart. There was a lot of stabs to the heart.
Definitely, I would agree 100%. But it's hard to say that. Because again, we go back to my tombstone. My pattern of behavior has always been, here lies a man that takes one more for the team. And that would be the best way to say it. So yeah, that would be my pattern of behavior. Yes.
Okay, so me sitting here and having that same pattern. So if I'm hearing correctly what you're saying, I'm the reason why they're stabbing me in the heart based on my behavior. I created that. Is that what you're saying?
Is
that what I'm hearing very clearly?
Nobody really creates.
I'm hearing that, James.
Can I answer your question?
Well, I'm just sitting over here,
Can
all
I answer
hurt.
one question at a time?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Nobody creates, and I know the point you're making. Nobody says abuse me. Nobody says come abuse me. Nobody does that.
But what about if it's my behavior? Do I deserve that because of my behavior?
Nobody deserves to be abused. Nobody does. That is a core belief of mine. So yeah, I see your point.
Except you.
I wasn't finished with my statement. But you're right. You're 100% right. That was the pathetic part of my tombstone. Is you were 100% right. I would agree 100%, except for me. I found a pattern of behavior to excuse the abuse that was done to me. I got this. So yeah, you said it very well. That's what I believed. I have a tremendous amount of compassion for people that are going through, even the people that abuse me. I can see you're going to interrupt me again. Is that you want me to go on what I was going to say, or
No, finish what you were going to say.
okay? So, and this is great bantering back and forth. I could see other people's pain, and I can understand why they do the things they do. That's a gift set of mine. I own that. I can feel when you say to me, if it was you, if it was you that went through that, I can definitely feel it and have compassion for that. Definitely. Yeah, I can do that. At the sake, okay, go ahead.
Well, okay, there's two things I'm going to hit right here.
Okay, that's great.
So the first thing you got done telling me that you have compassion and understanding. If I was going through that, you would have compassion.
Definitely. Even I would even sacrifice myself for it.
In the beginning of
Does that make sense?
In the beginning of
that
this,
makes sense what I just said there.
I'm just going to hit that too.
Okay.
In the beginning of this podcast starting out, you were talking about it's really hard for you to talk about your story because you don't see how it's going to benefit anybody else, how it's going to help anybody else.
I agree.
So how are you going to sacrifice yourself helping me if you have compassion for me in my situation when you can't even announce that you have been abused, when you can't even share your story? Help me understand that. Second thing, okay, you talked about, I'm on a roll, exactly. Second thing, you talked about, you don't want to be judged. You were being judged and you don't want to be judged, okay? So you don't want to be judged, or you don't want to be the one judging, is what you're saying. Okay, if I'm sharing my story, which matches yours, to you, okay, you're having compassion for me. What would you tell me is happening to me? What would you tell me? Would you tell me that these people don't mean it? Would you tell me, Nancy, you're probably looking at that all wrong. They didn't mean that. Would you tell me that? If I'm actually sitting over here feeling the tremendous amount, you can see I'm feeling a tremendous amount of pain, and I'm sharing, and you just got done saying that you have compassion for people who are being abused. You also have a passion for the abuser. So help me understand here, James. Would you tell me that I need to be compassionate for my abusers? Would you tell me that? Would you tell me? Would you basically sweeten the deal, so to speak? Would you tell me that they don't mean to do that? Is that would you tell me that? They didn't mean that. Is that truly what you would tell me?
No, farthest thing from what I would have said.
And why would you not tell me that, James? Why would you not tell me that?
Because nobody, what I told you in push, should ever be abused, and you should never sugarcoat for somebody that is actually being abused. You would never sugarcoat it for the person. You set them up to be abused and abused and abused again.
So then you just got done answering your question earlier where you said that you don't see the reason for sharing your story, how that's going to help someone else. You just got done answering that.
Yeah.
And so because of exactly what you just got done saying, you should never sugarcoat when someone is being abused.
No.
So let's not hold back on the actual abuse that happened to you. Let's not sugarcoat it. No. Let's not make excuses for them. Let's actually... So if I'm a person that's sitting right now in a situation that you were in, James, let's describe it that I can identify. Because again, we go back to you. You weren't even aware you were in this situation until everything fell apart.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
That's correct. Yeah. So what it felt like to me, and it was abuse. It was there's a number of words that I can say. It was betrayal. When you love someone, when you trust and share your intimate, I guess the word intimate, but of comradeship, family. When you trust, and then have it all turn you and realize it was all fake. I guess the hardest thing for me is people allowed me to believe that we were family, we were friends, or you're my wife, and it wasn't. It wasn't
real.
It wasn't real. It wasn't two-sided. One of the greatest fears I had growing up in life was what people, and I used to always say this to pacify me. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? It means, well, we'll just give him 10 minutes,
right,
and let him believe that. And so a lot of that, people would come up and say to me, "You're the strongest man I ever seen." They would say to me, "With this organization, what would it be without you?" And at the end of the day, and I probably believed that, didn't I? I was rhetorical, of course. I believed that. I believed my performance was working until it got real. And at the end of the day, the organization would go without me. At the end of the day, when I stopped putting out, it didn't matter. It was done. I was replaceable like that in 2 seconds. But all the things that were said to me were all lies.
They were, and also within in that performance that you were doing, James, there was also a lot of mocking you. There was a tremendous amount of mocking. Mm-hmm. This is just a phase, or do you know what you're doing? I admire you, but do you know what I'm doing?
Oh, don't we love the word? I'm talking
yes.
Third person. Don't I love the word I admire you? I got a lot of that. I admire
But
what
do
you do.
you know what
But
you're doing?
But, yeah. Oh, yeah. Do you
But
know?
oh, by the way, keep your shrapnel away from us.
Yeah, but keep on doing it.
Exactly.
Because
It makes us look good.
As long as it makes us look good, keep doing it.
But if your shrapnel comes into our space, you need to get it away from us.
Need
Yes,
to clean it up.
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to dirty it.
Exactly.
So it really goes, here lies a man that took one for the team. So yeah, it was, so for myself, I'm sitting across the table sharing for myself. If I'm sitting across the table hearing you, what I would say for myself is the life of performance and being able to was open myself, my life of performance, open myself up to a tremendous amount of views for the people around me that love me. I opened, and I would, if it wasn't for the intervention and transformation, I'd still be doing it today.
You would. And within your performance, you were so focused on performing that you continue to lose yourself. And there's a lot of gaslighting that was going on.
Oh yeah, the gaslighting. You're second guessing yourself. That's where you start losing your moral compass. What's right?
Right.
You're screwed. Exactly what you said earlier. You're overreacting, or you're. I don't forget the other words you said, but yeah, it's like, it's not take you seriously. You're overreacting.
It's always you. We talked about this. Yeah, you became the scapegoat for everything. So you were constantly apologizing.
I apologize for everything.
Because you didn't really, again, you were constantly doing something.
I was.
You were always in the wrong.
One of the things that really helped in the transformation was what you would sit across the table for me. And this is, I said, you would always ask me the question, and which was really therapeutic for me. I think I would ask you, did I make you mad or whatever?
You would actually actually ask me, you're like, okay, you would tell me you're walking on eggshells. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you have to throw your hat in. That's what you would say. You're walking on eggshells and you have to throw your hat in. Good. Because you don't know, because you think you did something wrong. And so I would always ask you, well, did you? Did you do something wrong? Yeah,
that's how far the gaslighting went. Is I would always that would be, you were my business partner and also my coach. Mm-hmm. I would ask you if I did something wrong because I had no clue if I did anything wrong. That's how far I went and was gaslit. At the end of the day, I didn't know if I did anything wrong or not. People would tell me. People became the community became
your mirror.
My mirror.
Your conscience and your mirror. And
that's what we call moral compass.
Yes. And
so if they say I did something wrong, then I must have, right? That's where I was at.
Well, it was especially...
and I even projected it onto you and say, did I do something wrong?
Right. It was especially when you came to, again, we talked about in several different podcasts that there was a friend that betrayed you, but then there was also the ex-wife that totally betrayed you. Those two held your moral compass. I mean, the whole community did, but those two were really the biggest ones to hold your moral compass. And when it really came down to it, they didn't have any morals at all. But because you would talk about your morals, they would project them onto you.
Yeah. Well, in one part, one of them said, I need to know where your shame is at. Mm-hmm. What the hell is that?
Exactly.
Does that make sense? Did I say it well to the audience? Would you ask somebody, I need to know where your shame so I can help you?
Well, but again, if I'm using, because shame is an emotion that I can use to get control of you. So yes, if I'm aware that I have total control over you, yes, but again, I wouldn't ask. Because that's kind of giving away your control, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yes, that's basically how tremendously it came. Exactly.
And that's, I guess, again, it's not about people, right? But that's the abuse. That's the situation. Does that make sense what I just said?
Would you tell me that? If I was in the abuse situation, would you tell me it's not about them? I'm just asking, James. Would you tell me that? Because right now, if I'm in the situation, it is really much about the people. So you're going to tell me it's not about the people?
Yeah. Yeah, that's of course I'm not. That's what coming through a lot of this has been hard. And it really goes back to the acceptance of abuse. I would even say, growing up being physically abused, I would wipe that off too. And I think that's one of the things that I've really come to realize is you can't. One of the things I think I learned I've been learning through the last 2 weeks. None of us should excuse abuse that happened to us.
No.
And I did. And that's something I've learned a lot. I mean, these last 5 years. And there's no way I should. It's just one of the things that really comes to it. And as I'm being very transparent here, and as you ask me these questions, I'm really showing you. I want to show the audience that I really do want to say, and what I've learned for myself. Because again, we look at the tombstone, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody should ever, including myself, make light of abuse.
Exactly.
Because I can tell you, here's a man alive with a tombstone. It's a long path back when you do.
It's a lifetime. It's a lifetime damage that happens from the abuse. And we really, where you talk about, because you don't want to use the word victim, so you make light of abuse.
Yeah,
but you are a victim. When you are being abused, you are a victim. Doesn't put you in the victim mentality. It just says you are a victim. And it's allowing yourself, part of emotional intelligence is being able to allow yourself to feel all that injustice, all that violation, to feel all that. That's really important towards your step of healing. But in order to even feel that, you have to allow yourself to say that, yes, you are a victim of abuse.
Yeah. That is a conversation that we just had has been the most helpful, but the most hardest through this whole journey. Through this whole journey, it was easy, and I don't like the word easy because none of this shit is easy.
No.
But it was a natural behavior of mine to minimize abuse. It looked like the least past a resistance. And the more I minimize the abuse and say enough is enough, the deeper, exactly what you said, the more you lose your soul. Mm-hmm. And it came to a place where if it wasn't for the transformation and Orange Rose Services and also God, I would not be here today. I came to a place because what did I do? I minimized the abuse from little on up. Mm-hmm. And that's just one of the things. But you're right. I could say exactly what we just went back and forth in was who I was, is that we can sit back and forth and I can sit across someone else and never, ever do that. But for myself, yeah, I've minimized it. And that's how deep I got into being sold in slavery to relationships. And I like to use that terminology.
It really is. That's where you talk about the performance, where you continue to perform. You had to continue to perform, and you could never measure up. You were never going to reach, and the never measuring up was you were never going to reach that point where you could rest and say, wow, I made it. I achieved the relationship that I so longed for, that I am worthy of. Instead, exactly what you said. Once you stopped performing, they were gone.
Yeah.
But they didn't leave quietly.
Yeah. No, it was unjust.
Yes.
Just like if I could sit across the table and tell you, it wasn't just. It really was. It's not blaming. It wasn't just. I'm not, and that, I think the other thing when you ask, when you minimize the abuse, what comes in your mind is, I got this. I got this. Take one more hit. I got this. I can handle this. It's where one person said, you're the strongest person I ever know. I got this. To the place to where I didn't have shit. And what I mean by that, I was at the bottom of who I was. Not who I was. I was at the bottom of the barrel. I couldn't even decipher what a tree and a car was. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I couldn't even figure out anything.
You hit rock bottom.
I hit rock bottom. Yeah, I ain't got nothing.
No.
I got nothing. But man, back then, if you want something done, or you want it, I always like to say, you want the trash taken out, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking metaphorically, and also I own a cleaning business. I did it literally too.
Right.
He's your man. You want somebody that'll mediate, step right in the middle of the battle and stop it all? He's your man.
For your side. He takes your side. That's true.
Oh, he'll be there.
But make sure that it doesn't, again, make sure that shrapnel doesn't come over.
Oh, no. If you're going to take trash out, make sure you take it out. And don't
back door.
Take it out the back door and don't go through the front door.
Exactly.
Because we don't want to see the trash being taken out.
No, because it's not, because again, for us, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's a scapegoat. Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to talk about this part of the podcast? Because we're looking at a 2-part series. And this is the hardest part of this series for me, is to share that. Where I get excited about, you know me, I'm a very Mr. Positive, is what it means. Go ahead.
Well, you asked me, is there anything more? James, I'm just asking, do you really believe that you brought it? I mean, if there's someone out there that's in the situation you were in, do you feel like you described it enough that I, as that person being in there, can actually say, yes, I'm understanding what I'm getting? Because it's really this is really bringing out the reason for this specific part of it is to bring awareness. Because like you said, sometimes we're in situations where we're being abused and we understand it. We know, we're very aware that we're being abused. But we're talking about a situation where you had both sides. You had, growing up as a child, you were very much aware you were abused. We're talking about the other abuse, where it is happening and you don't even know it's happening until everything falls apart. And why everything falls apart is because as you are going down this journey, you are losing pieces of you are being ripped from you, bits by bits, and very subtly and very slowly, so that you don't even realize that when it comes to the end, when everything falls apart and no one is there, You are left to pick the pieces up, but you don't even know where the pieces are, and you don't even know where to begin where the pieces are because you don't recognize who you have become because you're so far away from the person that you once were. That's what we're describing in this section. That's the abuse we're describing. Again, there can be the abuse when a person's in it, and abuse in all situations is injustice. But this is abuse that's very, very subtly, you don't recognize it. And it hits you, and like I said, till all of a sudden, everything falls out and you become rock bottom. And you are left to put the pieces back together because everyone is gone, but you don't even know where to begin to find the pieces. This is what we're talking about. So, James, I'm just asking, given that content, do you believe... Is there anything else that you would add to if I'm that person that's in that situation currently? Is there anything else that you would add that would let me see, okay, this is possibly what situation I'm in?
Yeah, that's, just to say that I said enough in that. I think there's a lot more to be said. Because exactly what you said, Nancy, there are so many subtle ways that you can get to the place where I was at. And it doesn't happen obvious.
No.
It can happen through religion. It can happen through... Does that make sense? When being right. There's so many things that, as you talked about earlier, so many things that we don't measure up, and we all know that our family, our legacy, where we come from, is very important to us. But there are so many subtle ways that you can get to a place where you allow abuse and you never see it coming.
Mm-mm.
And it's it comes in different arenas. It could be an organization. It comes, and that's why we really talk about emotional intelligence and why you can identify a lot of those pieces in the sense of how we're feeling. I think the number one thing is when one of the things that I think the real danger, at least for me, was shutting off emotions, not listening to them, what they're saying to me. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because our bodies, our emotions are our ally. And I don't want to minimize none of this, but I got to a place to where I never thought I got to the place where I didn't feel.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the place where it's so numb. But a lot of it got there by ignoring my emotions. Sadness. Some of us have been raised in a culture that you shouldn't be sad. You suck it up and go back to work, right? My anger was telling me I was violated. When I was raised in a culture is anger is wrong. So stop losing your cookies instead of listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety, you need to get rid of it. I ignored, for me, that got me there. I ignored a lot of what I was feeling, which then I started ignoring. My feelings were valid. Your feelings are valid. Exactly when you asked me the question. When you're abused and you feel it. For me to sit across the table from you and tell me exactly what has been told me, you're just overreacting. That should never be told to a person. And if you have somebody that sits across the table from you and tells you that, run.
Mm-hmm.
Run. When anybody devalues your feelings and who you are, run.
I agree 100%, James. That's a very important a very important point to bring across.
And especially if they're the closest to you. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're overreacting. And if those people are closest to you and they're saying you're reacting, you're not saying, help me understand more what you're feeling, help me. If they just say you're reacting, run.
Overreacting, or they may not tell you you're overreacting, they just shut your feelings down. They just shut it down. Don't allow you to expand on your feelings or even process your feelings. Exactly, run.
Because that's where it starts. Mm-hmm. You know, somebody says you're sad, you need to suck it up and listen. Because that's where it starts. When you're not valued, your feelings aren't valid, that means you're not valid. I don't care. You can't separate feelings from who you are. I don't care.
I agree 100%. And not just that, our feelings are another source of information. They give us another source of information. And with the information comes gifts. And so they're shutting it down so that you don't get the information that those feelings are telling you. So exactly. They're constantly keeping you. They want to continue to keep you in the dark. Less information you have, the more control they can get from you.
And if you are, when you go through abuse, it's very important to find someone that will hear it, that will push you. Does that make sense? It's very hard. It's very hard. Most people will. What I've experienced is that those are the people that you end up before. They tell you it wasn't that bad. You know, they don't listen. Does that make sense?
They don't hear you. Mm-hmm.
There it is. I'm looking for, this is what's really hard. Because I know.
You're not heard.
And then what we call it was, I know there are people out there that suffer in silence. Mm-hmm. The organization or whatever it is.
You don't have a voice.
There's no acknowledgement of the injustice. And it feels, and through a lot of this, what it felt like, I was apologizing for organizational sins. And this is very true, and I can say this with very passion. I was apologizing for organizational sins, and they didn't have to apologize at all. And I walked away, losing my position and with the organizational sins, and I wasn't the one doing it. Sometimes we suffer in silence, and we think, and then we go back to the tombstone. We walk away with the organizational sins. And we didn't even do it, and we apologize. But the organization never took any responsibility. And it could be community, it could be whatever. But there was
and they don't need to, because you become the scapegoat.
Yeah, and you never really intended to do that. I mean, that's not who you are. That's not who I was. You know, and that's the subtleness.
But you're silenced, and your voice is shut down.
It doesn't matter. You can't open. Go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. You're silenced, and your voice is shut down, and so you can't speak.
No, you can't.
The truth. That's why you have to take the organizational sins with you.
Yes.
You don't have a choice. While they go up front in front of everyone, and and pretty much talk about how
great they are.
Come up with
their own narrative.
Exactly. You don't have a choice, because again, it's in your best interest.
It's in my best interest. Mm-hmm. And depending upon where the superiority role is at, whatever how we would say the powers that be, whether it's family, they got the biggest family. I mean, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you walk away taking the organizational sins. And it's like we say, scapegoat. And we are scapegoats depending upon, you could be a scapegoat. Again, go back to Dr. Seuss. If you don't have a circle, they have a square. Mm. And so some of that, when you ask the question, there's a lot that I can say, and for me, For me, it's been an evolution of continuing to how much I lost myself, and how I buried the abuse and not being able to verbalize it, because I got this, and or the real piece is I can't share this. It's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Is I got this says it's too painful for me to share this. So it really, from an ego perspective, or whatever you want to talk, a masculine perspective for me, I got this means that's masculine to me. I can take another hit. I got this. But really, what it really was crying out is I can't accept this. Or what was the word I was using? I'm sorry.
It's too painful.
There. You see? I even lost it a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's too painful. I can't share this. I can't share the abuse. It's really what it is. So if you're sitting across the table today and you got this, will you identify, I can't share this. I can't share this. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
You're not alone. Because I couldn't share it for years. And I used to say, I got this. I got this. And the more I said, I got this, the deeper and deeper I went. And remember I told you about the tombstone? That's how far I was going. So my word for the day, because it's hard for me to say my encouragement, because I get it. I get it with it, shadow of doubt. I can't share this. I can't share this. Start sharing it. That's what I want to say. Find someone to start sharing. Someone that doesn't devalue who you are and your feelings. And start sharing one thing at a time. You're not going to be able to share it all, but start sharing. Mm-hmm. One piece at a time. That's how it happened for me. It was one piece at a time. And there was a lot of... it just starts sharing one. Find someone you trust. Share one piece at a time. OrangeRoseServices.com. Email me at James@OrangeRoseServices. Would love to hear from you. Have a great week.